important for you to look at your goals, truly what you want to do in your life, and then look at the people who you spend the most time with in your life and figure out if that lines up.
All right, what's happening? What's happening, guys? Good morning to you. It is May 1st. I'm used to saying April. It is May 1st, 2020, man. We made it to May. We are all the way here. And man, we're going to talk about a topic this morning that is a little bit controversial for a lot of people right now. And one that I feel like a lot of people are avoiding, probably including me. But I want to talk about right now what fear does to you, the whole idea of fear and what it means, when you're afraid, what that triggers in your body, how you overcome that feeling of fear, and what I think that it's doing to a lot of people right now. And so we're going to talk through that this morning. I'm going to hopefully give you guys some perspective on the concept of fear, how to deal with it, what it does to you, like literally what it does to you, and what people are generally afraid of. So we're going to dig into the definition of that, and we're going to talk about a lot of different things. So I want you guys to think about this morning a few times in your life when fear has impacted you in some big way, right? When fear has literally shifted the way that you thought, it has shifted the way that you acted in your life as a result of that fear. And by the way, guys, there is no shame in being afraid of something, right? There's a lot of things in the world that people are afraid of. And I just want to get that out in the open, that there is absolutely nothing that you have to be ashamed of being fearful. When something makes you afraid, there's nothing to be ashamed of there. But I want to talk to you about what people are afraid of, what's going on out there right now that is making people afraid. And then I just want to give you guys some perspective on some of the things that I see that are happening, so that at a minimum, maybe you have some things to think about. And, in the best case scenario, I think that, maybe this message can help people just interact better, be a little bit more, have a little bit more healthy conversation, and not necessarily just, always be either fearful or lashing out and arguing with each other as a result of the fear that each side of the equation probably has right now. So the number one thing that I will say about fear is that fear can be overcome, right? So when you think about the whole concept of fear, what it does to you, how you react to it, you can shorten that whole process of kind of eliminating your fear or dealing with the fear, if you will, by taking action in some direction of solving it. And so when we say solving it, it's either taking action that kind of gets your mind off of the fear, so it allows you to take action in some other area of your life, so that you start to overcome or get through that fear. The time passes. You don't have to be just afraid. You can actually be taking action while you're afraid. The other part of overcoming fear, I believe, is education. It's actually taking the time to over educate yourself on a topic so that you can better understand it. So number one, I would say that, everybody right now should probably be educating themselves on the concept, the psychology, what happens when you are fearful in your mind, in your body, etc. And I have done a lot of that research for myself, just to be able to feel comfortable about, when things don't quite feel right, how do I deal with that? Like, how do I tactfully deal with that, tactically deal with that? So that's where the tricky part comes in, the education, because right now in the world, and this is why this morning's topic, I'm not trying to take a position on this topic of what's going on right now. I'm trying to educate you guys on the concept of fear and what actually happens and how you deal with it, because I feel like in a lot of ways, there's information that flows through our lives right now faster than it ever has before. And so often in today's world, people listen to, specific news channels or specific people on social media or specific types of information because that's what fuels their beliefs. And that can lead to not being educated. And I don't mean that those people are wrong and these people are right, but I mean actually seeking out facts and cross-referencing and going and trying to find some level of truth in the things that you're looking at so that, they can be cross-referenced and really looking at both sides. So an example of that would be that I try to read and watch a variety of different things when it comes to the topics that I'm trying to understand, so that I can hear both sides and I can actually process that with my own mind and my own set of values and beliefs and all of that stuff, so that when I'm processing things and I'm creating an opinion, that I'm doing that on balanced education. I'm not just listening to one side of something that creates fear, but I'm actually listening to both sides, and I'm trying to fact find, actually do some research on these things. And what I find is this, guys. I find that so many people just go out there and make statements and say things, and they just hear one story and that becomes their belief. And so I would just tell you guys that fear can turn into a really massive problem in our world as a result of people not actually checking things, not actually going and looking for the facts, but just believing, the people that they come to trust that are on television or that are writing news articles or that are, writing in newspapers or writing online stuff or videos that people watch. A lot of people follow a lot of influencers now that have opinions about this stuff, and you're not really sure how educated those influencers are. And so I would just tell you that fear is something you have to be very, very, very careful with, because, right now, I believe that there are two sides to, what's going on in our world. And I think that in a way, both sides feel like the other side is what they call fear-mongering, right? And I looked up the definition so that I could really educate you guys on what that means. And the definition, the dictionary definition of fear-mongering is the action of deliberately arousing public fear or alarm about a particular issue. And so right now there are people that are saying, everybody has to stay home because if we don't stay home, people are going to die. And then the other side is saying we have to get back to work because if we don't get back to work, businesses are going to fail. People are going to be in depression. There's going to be more domestic violence, all of those things. And so both sides are kind of digging their heels in and they're digging into this fear. And so I want you to understand this. When you have fear, it is either fear of something or fear for something. So you could have fear of illness or loss of money. You could have fear for your health, for your family, for the status that you have socially. And what I have learned is that fear unleashes a fight or flight in all of us, right? We know that. We feel it. We know how that works. And which one that unlocks or unleashes is based on a variety of different things. A lot of that is probably based on our personality. Some of it is based on our history of how we have dealt with fear, how much stuff we've dealt with in our life, probably. Like, does it become repetitious, or do we, deal with it in a certain way from a family history thing, or there's a variety of things. And the last thing would be our social status, because you see, in our country, there's a lot of people, and I have said this a bunch of times to individuals. I don't think I've said it on this show yet, but what you see when it comes to social status is that, the people who are in the lower class in our country, they're not really impacted quite as much. If they're receiving some sort of steady income, government assistance, something like that, their situation in this is not really impacted that much. The upper class is also not really impacted that much. So really the major impact of these types of situations comes for the middle class folks, the people who are really going to be impacted by a fluctuation in income, fluctuation in their normal environment. And so, those social statuses will determine, how we respond to these things, fight or flight or do nothing, right? And so I want you guys to understand this one thing. And I've been listening to a lot of information on this week. And I'll tell you the one thing that really struck a chord with me is that in history, and you guys can go back and look at this in history, and you will probably, if you've thought about, since I said this morning, about times in your life where fear has impacted you in a big way, you will realize that fear in some way, shape, or form is always used as a control mechanism. It is really used to influence people. And that happens all the time. It happens on a daily basis. When we are working somewhere and we get in some sort of trouble or we do something wrong and somebody has a conversation with us about our employment, it's the fear that really allows us to maintain control, go back to work, do the right things, all that kind of stuff. And so I want you guys to think about that. And again, I'm not trying to take sides here. I'm not trying to say that one side is right and the other side is wrong. I want you guys to think through this, gain your own perspective on what you think, is happening right now, and associate that or think about that with relation to how fearful people are, and what is happening here, and how is the news being reported, and how are the messages being delivered to you, and how could that stuff, both sides, how could it be manipulated, or how could it be changed or delivered in a certain way that creates more fear, which allows more control, which allows people to influence you in a different way, which allows them to tell you something that's going to keep you doing one certain thing. And I want you guys to actually think about that. I don't want to sit here and give you my opinion, because my opinion is only my opinion based on my research, the facts that I see, my history, my understanding of things. And so I don't feel like it's fair. And this is what's happening online everywhere, for people to just go push their beliefs on the other side. So there's one side that believes, that we should all stay home. And if you don't believe that we should stay home, then, you don't care about people, or, you don't care about older people, or, whatever it is, or that, you're reading or watching the wrong things. And the other side is thinking, that everybody is sheep and you shouldn't follow this, or, you guys are just listening to everything. And so I would encourage you guys today and this weekend, while you have some downtime, to figure out, to actually do some research and start looking at statistics and start looking at things that make sense, and just bring more clarity to your own truth. Whatever it is that you believe in, nobody should be able to tell you what you believe in. I believe also that nobody should tell you this is a free country. Nobody should tell you what you can say and what you can't say. But I do believe that there is some level of respect that should come along with having these types of conversations. Because what I feel like right now is that if you have, one or the other side of that conversation, whether you are a believer in, that everybody should stay home and stay safe until whatever time you believe that should be, then you're one kind of person. And if you believe the opposite, if you believe everybody should go back to work and we should, figure out how to do this a different way, then you're a different kind of person. And I would just say to you guys that, it's really important to be able to understand your emotions. I talk about something that I call emotional discipline all the time. A secondary way to say that is emotional intelligence. How can you deal with your own emotions? How can you process those? And can you have real conversations with people that disagree with you and get something from that? right? Actually understand, maybe you educate the other person, they educate you, but you understand the other person's perspective a lot more. Because I think that what's happening right now is that a lot of our actions are driven by fear of one thing or fear of another thing. And so understanding that fear and understanding how to overcome that and actually be able to process that and get back to, logical thinking is a really important piece to this whole puzzle that we're all experiencing right now. Because remember, when we all go back to normal, when we all go back to work, we all go back to whatever it is that we're doing, we're going to be dealing with a lot of people and interacting with a lot of people who still have a tremendous amount of fear because they're not going to do this. They're not going to process that fear and try to understand where that is coming from or try to understand how they can be comfortable one way or the other. And I think that the more that we understand that fear and the more that we try to help each other through this whole thing, the better off this whole situation will become. Because right now, all you see is just arguments and people, taking one side or the other, or people, talking about how this isn't true or that's not true or this person's not qualified. I put out a post the other day that said, I was kind of laughing because it says, this week's Facebook argument, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but this week's Facebook argument is, let me tell you why this person's not qualified to say whatever they're saying or take the position that they're trying to take, while basically I try to tell you that I'm qualified to qualify that person. It just, it doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. It's like, I only believe, this, or I only believe people that say that, or I only believe, and I would just tell you guys, do some research, like really dig in and start to look. And I would encourage you to watch both sides, because when you watch both sides, you're going to come to an amazing understanding of how both sides see it, how both sides respond to things, how both sides are dealing with, and what those people actually feel like. Because I can relate to the people from both sides. I can understand how people feel. And I am encouraging you to just go educate yourself. Educate yourself first on the materials, but then also be thinking about why you feel a certain way as you're thinking through what you're reading. Why is it that I am afraid of this? Why is it that I feel a certain way? Is there some historical behavior that I have, or did something happen in my life that makes me feel that way? Is it because I have a certain illness, or I'm in a certain situation and these other people aren't? And how would I feel differently if I didn't have this or that? So all I'm saying this morning is this, guys. It is an important time in our lives. We're going through a really, really interesting time, one that everybody will remember forever and be able to go back to. And number one, I think that it's important for us to be, kind and understanding to each other. But even more importantly than that, I think it's the most important time in everybody's life to be educated and to, again, going back to the word that I used the other day in the show, to have some grace when you're interacting with people and really trying to understand and not having arguments or not going back and forth with people and trying to convince them of your side of it. It's more about education, and it's about somebody coming to that understanding themselves. And so it was an important topic for me. I've been kind of watching people go back and forth. I've had it happen to me. I've had people, message me and say all kinds of stuff about things that I'm, posting or sharing or whatever it is. And, I'm not at all trying to say that I'm right and somebody else is wrong. But when people send messages, and some of the people that, I've seen have had, just terrible things. I mean, you've got, whether it's one side or the other, it doesn't really matter. You've got Dr. Fauci having death threats put on him, and you've got people who are from the other side having their children's lives threatened and all kinds of crazy stuff. And so I think that education, emotional discipline, and emotional intelligence is what really helps us process all this. It helps us get through these things. And I think that it's really, really important for us to just take a moment and do some of that self-education and education this morning, throughout the day today, whenever you have time, and this weekend, to really be able to understand this for yourself, not for other people. It's not about saving other people's feelings. That helps too, but it's about understanding yourself and really getting to a place that you can be at peace with whatever it is that you believe. But educate yourself, over-educate yourself, and education only happens if you're listening to both sides. If you really do some heavy digging and listen to both sides of any situation, but this one's very easy to see what both sides are thinking. So I appreciate you guys being here. I'm wishing you an amazing Friday, man. I got a lot on my plate today, and I'm excited to dig in. I'm excited to get to work here. I got some meetings today that are important, and man, just a lot of stuff going on. So I'm happy. I'm grateful that you guys all hung out with me here this morning, and I will see you again Monday morning, same place, same time, right here on Morning Perspective. Love you guys.